Mike Williams is a 37-year-old man who has shared a marital journey with Joanna for nearly a decade. Our abode is nestled in a quaint Midwest town, where life unfolds with a simplicity and tranquility that is both comforting and predictable. Joanna, a vivacious soul with roots in affluence, exudes confidence and sociability. Her parents helm a prosperous local enterprise, and our lifestyle has been cushioned by comfort. Despite the occasional discord, our union has been predominantly characterized by tranquility. Our family is graced with the presence of two young souls, Max, our 7-year-old son, and Emma, our 5-year-old daughter. Amid the whirlwind of familial duties, I found myself gradually losing touch with the intimate connection that once defined Joanna and me. Lately, however, I've been assailed by a subtle disquiet, a feeling akin to a chill that insidiously seeps into our marital fabric. Tonight marks the annual gala hosted by our company, an event that we organize each year to celebrate with employees and business allies. While such soirees tend to sap my energy, Joanna approaches them with a fervor that is almost palpable. Her poise and social acumen are second to none, and she commands attention effortlessly. This evening, she's draped in a deep scarlet gown that complements her silhouette to perfection. Her ability to captivate a room is uncanny, leaving me to often feel like little more than an appendage. "You look stunning," I remarked, my voice tinged with the weight of weariness. "Thank you, darling," she replied, her hand grazing my chest gently. "I believe this evening will be delightful. Are you feeling excessively fatigued?" "I'm managing," I replied with a nod, though the relentless social charade was becoming increasingly devoid of meaning for me. "That's reassuring," she said, giving my shoulder a reassuring pat before moving on to discuss business with Jessica. As she melted into the throng, I watched her go, a wave of disorientation sweeping over me. I was well aware of her penchant for such events, but tonight, a peculiar sense of distance seemed to stretch between us, as if an unseen chasm were widening. As the alcohol permeated my system, I allowed myself to drift into a gentle buzz. The atmosphere around me was vibrant with laughter and conversation, yet an odd sense of emptiness lingered within. That's when my peripheral vision caught a glimpse that stirred something within me. Joanna was engaged in a lively dialogue with a tall, smiling man, seemingly a prominent figure among the crowd, perhaps one of the company's stars. A furrow formed between my brows as I sensed an unsettling dissonance in the scene. Engrossed in their exchange, the man even reached out to touch Joanna's shoulder, and as his fingers brushed against her, a surge of discomfort washed over me. I tried to smooth my brow, urging myself to compose my thoughts. It could have been nothing more than friendly interaction or a professional connection, yet there was an inexplicable feeling that wouldn't dissipate. With another sip of wine, my gaze was inexorably drawn back to them. Joanna appeared indifferent to my presence, her laughter mingling with the man's as her eyes sparkled with genuine excitement. Her smile was captivating, exuding confidence and allure that were impossible to overlook. The whole encounter seemed so relaxed, as if she were simply relishing an informal dinner, but I was consumed by a profound sense of detachment. Our bond felt taut, like a rubber band on the verge of snapping. I shifted my focus to my phone, mindlessly scrolling through social media to distract myself. There, on Instagram, was a selfie of Joanna, her face adjacent to that man's, both beaming with joy. The background was festooned with balloons and streamers, as though their shared moment was something worth celebrating. The sight of that photo sent a jolt through me, my heart skipping a beat as if a sharp object had penetrated my chest. I took a deep breath and surveyed my surroundings. The crowd remained animated, unaware of the storm brewing inside me. A chill cascaded through me, as though a cold hand had clutched my heart. In one motion, I emptied my wineglass, a wave of nausea welling up in my stomach. "Mike, are you all right?" my colleague David inquired, his hand on my back as he noticed the crease on my forehead. "Just a bit weary," I replied with a forced smile. "Don't overexert yourself. Tonight you should unwind. You're always so occupied," David advised, his expression one of concern, oblivious to the turmoil I was experiencing. As the evening progressed, the distance between Joanna and me seemed to loom larger. Our exchanges grew sparse, with each conversation feeling hollow, as if we were merely passing each other by without truly connecting. Upon arriving home, I often found Joanna engrossed in her digital world, her fingers dancing across the screen as she engaged with the online community. Meanwhile, I found solace in my work, attempting to fill the widening gap that was forming between us. On this particular night, I made the unusual decision to not accompany Joanna home. She appeared to be enjoying her dialogue with that man, and I questioned whether I should intrude upon her social realm. Despite a nagging discomfort, I convinced myself to refrain from overanalysis. Joanna has always been adept at socializing, while I, her husband, often feel like a tired soul struggling to match her stride. Yet, there was an underlying shift, a subtle transformation occurring like an unseen hand tugging at the fabric of our marriage. I found myself questioning whether I could cling to the connection we once shared, or even identify what that connection truly was. Over the past several months, an unshakable sensation has taken hold, suggesting that Joanna is gradually slipping away from me. Her schedule has become busier, her social life more vibrant, and our dialogue has suffered as a result, becoming increasingly terse and removed. This morning, as Joanna rushed out to the gym, her fingers tirelessly tapping out messages on her phone, I observed a routine that now feels foreign to our shared life. She is constantly on the go, yet remains inaccessible to me. Even when I attempt to engage with her, her responses are cursory, followed by an excuse about meeting friends or catching up on work. The once cherished moments spent at home with me and the children have become a rarity. I rendezvoused with my college companion, Deidre, for an evening of much-needed conversation. A trailblazer within our company, Deidre has always possessed an astute insight into the intricacies of life and human behavior. In the midst of a recent storm of thoughts, I sought her counsel, hoping for a beacon of clarity. Upon arrival at the bar, I found Deidre perched by the window, a solitary half-filled glass of red wine at her side. Her gesture of waving me over was a welcoming relief, a reminder of the simpler days gone by. It had been an age since we indulged in a heartfelt dialogue, our lives now interwoven with the demands of family and career. "You're here at last, Mike. You seem frazzled." Deidre greeted me with a mix of jest and genuine concern etched into her smile. "I'm just managing some hurdles," I replied with a wistful smile, settling across from her. The comfort of her presence was palpable, though the weight on my shoulders remained. Deidre lifted her glass, encouraging me to join her in a toast. "There's no time like the present for a drink. Let's steer clear of heavy topics tonight," she proposed, a glint of mischief dancing in her eyes. "I'm willing to bet your wife is the source of your distress again?" I inhaled deeply, striving to maintain composure. To be frank, something's amiss between Joanna and me. It's as if a subtle shift has occurred, and I can't quite place my finger on it. Deidre set her glass down, her eyes narrowing in contemplation. "A shift? You're talking about your relationship? Are you entertaining suspicions of her fidelity?" A soft sigh escaped me as I averted my gaze. "I'm uncertain. She's different, less reliant on me than before. Her evenings are frequently spent socializing, and when she returns, she's often immersed in her phone or engaged in lively discourse with friends. I can't shake the feeling that I've missed something crucial." "Are you certain you're not overreacting?" Deidre's voice held a note of tenderness. "Joanna has always been a paragon of independence. You're aware of her nature. She thrives on social interaction. Perhaps she's simply been preoccupied with work." I furrowed my brow, acknowledging the validity of her point. "I'm aware she's busy, but have you observed her heightened activity on social media? Particularly with Dan, her colleague? Their interactions are frequent and, in public, their rapport appears particularly close." "Dan?" Deidre raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "I recall him. He's certainly a charmer, and there's a clear rapport between him and Joanna at the office. Could it be that you're delving into conjecture?" With each swirl of my wine glass, the liquid's warmth seeped into my fingertips, cascading a soothing heat through my body. "I'm at a complete loss," I admitted, my voice tinged with uncertainty. Joanna swears they're merely colleagues, but their interactions at events are impossible to miss. There's an unspoken connection between them, and I can't help but feel she thrives on the attention. Deidre took a moment to absorb my words before responding thoughtfully. Have you considered the possibility that Joanna is simply playing a role, striving to project confidence? Networking is second nature to her, particularly in professional circles. Often, our behaviors signify nothing more than what they appear to be on the surface. My confusion deepened as I met Deidre's gaze, my eyes betraying my turmoil. I can't shake the nagging sensation that she's pulling away from me. The woman who once inquired about my day or cherished the small details of my life seems to have vanished. I'm left to question whether she even values our relationship anymore. Deidre's expression grew solemn as she locked eyes with me. Mike, it's not uncommon for couples to doubt themselves when under stress. Have you engaged in meaningful dialogue with her? Have you addressed these concerns directly? A moment of silence enveloped us as I grappled with the truth. I had sidestepped any direct confrontation with Joanna, tiptoeing around sensitive topics for fear of her dismissive response or accusations of overreacting. Deidre's insight seemed to resonate with my innermost fears. Avoidance will only exacerbate the issue. You must approach her with candor, inquiring about her true feelings. Only she can confirm the integrity of your relationship. Reflecting on Deidre's advice, I found myself staring into my wine glass, the liquid now a mirror to my thoughts. Her words had unveiled not only my confusion regarding Joanna's actions but also my own trepidation. I feared the loss of her, the potential extinction of the warmth that once defined our union. You're correct, I conceded, my tone more subdued. I've danced around the issue, avoiding the heart of the matter. Perhaps I've been overly sensitive. When it comes to matters of the heart, we are often called upon to confront our deepest fears. If you seek to truly understand her, and are willing to tackle this challenge head-on, the answers will reveal themselves. Regardless of the result, the act of trying will stand as a testament to your effort. I nodded, inhaling deeply, and committed, I'll give it a shot. Deidre regarded me with a mix of concern and contemplation. Mike, as you make your choices, keep in mind one crucial thing. Don't let unwarranted doubts dominate your thoughts. Should there be an issue with Joanna, don't wait for a resolution to come to you. Take the initiative to comprehend and rectify it. Her advice resonated profoundly, compelling me to acknowledge that I could no longer linger in indecision, allowing uncertainty and doubt to widen the gap between me and the one I cherished. Rising to my feet, I gently patted her on the shoulder and whispered with gratitude, Thank you, Deidre. This conversation has been invaluable. She returned my gesture with a smile and a nod. Anytime, Mike. You're my friend, and I've got your back. Exiting the bar, I found myself more relaxed than when I had entered. The cool night breeze brushed against my face, instilling a sense of clarity as if I could now discern the path that lay ahead, one that I had yet to traverse. Come what may, I was determined to confront Joanna and bridge the ever-growing divide between us. In the days that followed, Deidre's counsel remained ever-present in my mind. Observing Joanna as she moved through her daily routine, her busy life bustling around her, I couldn't shake the feeling of a weight pressing down on my chest. She seemed to carry on as usual, her vibrant social life with friends and colleagues unwavering, while I felt increasingly like an outsider looking in. Her smile retained its brilliance, but whenever I attempted to engage her in a meaningful dialogue, she would deftly steer the conversation away, as though an imperceptible barrier was slowly rising between us. To grasp the turmoil churning within me required an understanding beyond the superficial. That night, following our meal, Joanna proposed a leisurely stroll. Her tone was relaxed, as if the world remained unchanged. I concurred, feigning tranquility, yet beneath the surface, a storm of disquiet was brewing. We ambled down the well-known street, the atmosphere invigorating and the evening zephyr crisp. Joanna moved with a lightness, periodically glancing at her phone, her laughter punctuating the night. Such evenings always found her at ease. But for me, An internal tempest was unleashed. Abruptly, she halted, her gaze upon me, tinged with perplexity. "Mike, what's amiss? There's a weight on your mind recently," she inquired. I pauses, took a fortifying breath, and resolved to unburden myself. "Joanna, may we talk?" My voice quavered with apprehension. She hesitated, then offered a smile. "What now? I'm aware you've been swamped, but nothing of great consequence is afoot, is it?" "This isn't about work," I declared, halting our walk to confront her directly. "I sense a rift forming between us, one that's affecting our relationship. It's come to my attention that Dan's presence in your life is increasing. The time you spend together has expanded, and it leaves me feeling adrift." Surprise flickered across Joanna's features before she regained her composure. "Mike, let's be reasonable. Dan is simply a colleague, our interactions are purely professional. You're overestimating the situation." "Am I?" I rejoined, a wry chuckle escaping me. "We both know our conversations have waned. Your absence has become more pronounced, and your late returns are becoming frequent. Are you evading me? Or is there another force at play here?" Joanna's gaze dropped, a momentary spark of uncertainty in her eyes. I detected a shift in her expression as she bit her lip, contemplating her response. "Mike, the demands of work have been relentless, and the strain is considerable." "It's not as you believe," she confessed, her voice tinged with fatigue. "Your support means the world to me, but I also need my own space, a slice of independence." The cool evening air whispered through the trees as Joanna sauntered along, her gaze periodically flitting to her phone. Her laughter punctuated the night, a joyful counterpoint to the disarray I felt within. While she exuded a serene confidence on such nights, my own thoughts were a whirlwind of chaos. Abruptly, she halted, turning to me with a furrowed brow that betrayed her confusion. "Mike, what's eating at you? There's something weighing on your mind lately?" she prodded. I cleared my throat, took a fortifying breath, and resolved to unburden myself. "Joanna, can we talk for a moment?" My query was delivered in a low, anxious tone. She hesitated, then offered a reassuring smile. "What's on your mind this time? I know you've been swamped at work, but nothing too serious, right?" My response was a stark pivot from the trivial. "This isn't about work. I've been sensing a shift between us, something that's starting to strain our relationship. I've noticed your interactions with Dan have grown more frequent. It's hard not to feel a twinge of unease." Her features registered a flash of surprise before she regained her equilibrium. "Mike, where's this coming from? Dan's just a coworker, and our conversations are strictly professional. You're jumping to conclusions." A wry chuckle escaped me. "Are you sure? It's clear to me that we've been drifting apart, talking less and less. You're rarely home, and when you do return, it's often in the dead of night. Are you evading me? Or is there something more at play?" Joanna's gaze fell, her eyes darting before she met my stare with a resolute effort. "Mike, you know how intense my workload has been, and the stress has been overwhelming. It's not what you think." Her voice quavered with fatigue. "You're my anchor, my trusted confidant. But I need my own space, my own life too." Her explanation did little to assuage my fears. Instead, they only amplified my disquiet. "I get that you need your space. I've never stood in your way. But I have to know, is the bond we share as strong as it once was? It feels like you're pulling away, not relying on me like you used to. It's not about you, but rather something else I'm pursuing. Something that seems to have slipped away from me." "You've misplaced something?" I inquired, puzzled by her revelation. "What do you mean by that? You've always professed that our marriage is robust and our lives content. Have I failed to meet your expectations recently?" Her gaze faltered momentarily before she regained her composure. "No, Mike. My love for you is unwavering. It's just that I've become disoriented. I'm uncertain of my place within our union. I sense a piece of myself has vanished." The notion of her losing herself struck me as unexpected. "You've lost a part of yourself? Why haven't you confided in me about this?" If you're feeling lost, we can navigate through this together. You're my partner, and I'm prepared to bear your burdens. We can't tackle this alone." Tears brimmed in her eyes, her lips quivering slightly as she spoke. "I understand that, Mike, but can you truly grasp what I'm going through? At times, it feels like you're so engrossed in your work that I'm an outsider looking in. The attention and partnership I once felt from you seem distant now. I'm not holding you responsible, but I can't shake off this overwhelming sense of loneliness." Her admission hit me hard. The idea of her feeling lonely was unbearable. There was no resentment in her eyes, only a profound sense of helplessness and fatigue. In that moment, it dawned on me that the divide between us wasn't due to external factors but the emotional distance that had slowly crept in. I wasn't aware, I admitted, guilt seeping into my tone. "I've been so consumed by work that I've overlooked your needs. I apologize, Joanna. You never expressed any of this, and I failed to notice." She shook her head with a soft sigh. "There's no need for apologies, Mike. We've both been preoccupied, and life has become increasingly complex. Sometimes it feels like the clarity of our love has blurred. I hope you can comprehend. I yearn for us to rediscover that connection." I gazed into her eyes, a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. We stood at a crossroads, each hesitating, waiting for the other to take the first step. We had a decade of marriage behind us, filled with sweet and trust that once flourished in our hearts. However, it now appeared that those feelings were not as steadfast as they once were. I inhaled deeply, my resolve firming. "Joanna, we're at a crossroads. I can't bear the distance between us widening any further. I'm prepared to put in the effort to reclaim what we've lost, but it requires your commitment to change alongside me." She nodded, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I'm prepared, Mike. I'm ready to try." Our conversation waned after that. A gentle night breeze wafted through, lifting the weight from my chest. In that instant, I sensed that we had both opted to reassess our relationship. Whatever the future held, I was resolute to face it together with her. I'm acutely aware that marriage isn't always a tranquil pond. In the volatile ocean of emotions, we've all acted disjointed parts and made imperfect choices. Joanna's admission clarified that our challenge wasn't solely the temporal distance that had grown between us, but the chasm of our unarticulated needs and expectations. Although we had agreed to mend our relationship, the fissures in our hearts were still apparent, and the journey to repair them promised to be arduous. In the days that followed, we didn't enact any immediate transformations. Our lives remained ensnared by the hustle and bustle. Work, children, and household tasks consumed us, barely allowing us a breath. Joanna continued to immerse herself in her social engagements, arriving home with a weary countenance, while I often found myself working late into the night, returning to an empty house burdened by anxiety. Each of us was caught up in our own orbits, yet the divide between us seemed intractable. That night, I found myself alone in my study, my thoughts in turmoil. Work documents lay scattered on the desk, but they held no appeal. Joanna's words from earlier echoed in my mind. "I feel as though I've lost myself." They struck me with the precision of a needle, prodding at my conscience, refusing to release their grip. "The children have been tucked in. Now it's time for some well-deserved rest," she said, her voice still laced with a distant politeness, devoid of any detectable emotion. It struck me as formulaic, a script that suggested we had morphed from interdependent partners into mere acquaintances in each other's narratives. My grip on the phone tightened, and a wave of unease washed over me once more. I reached out to Deidre, desperate for a meaningful dialogue. Despite our previous in-depth discussion, I found myself at a crossroads, the path ahead shrouded in ambiguity. "Hey Mike, what's troubling you? You sound perturbed." Deidre's voice was immediate, almost as if she could tune into my emotional frequency. "I'm at a loss." I exhaled a heavy sigh. "Joanna and I are growing apart. She's constantly occupied, out with friends, and it seems we've run out of things to discuss. Her interactions with me are void of warmth, as if I'm nothing more than a passive presence in her life." Deidre's response was forthright. "Mike, you've shared a significant portion of your life with her. You know she values her independence. She may not be adept at showing her feelings, particularly when under stress. The growing distance between you two might not be indicative of a waning love, but rather her internal struggle with anxiety and uncertainty. A moment of silence befell us as I gazed beyond the window into the night sky, a sense of disorientation gripping me. Her independence is something I've always known and respected, but I can't help but yearn for the days when she leaned on me. The transparency she once had in sharing her thoughts is now replaced by a wall of silence, her emotions locked away in a distant corner. Deidre's tone grew resolute. Mike, a marriage thrives on the efforts of both parties, not just one. You can't place the entire burden on Joanna. What you need is genuine, heartfelt communication, not just exchanges about daily tasks and professional obligations. I nodded, acknowledging her words, though she couldn't see me. Our marriage had transcended love, transforming into a heavy responsibility. Joanna was battling her demons in the external world, while I was fighting my own war within our home. We were both pursuing our individual goals, but we had lost sight of the most crucial element that bound us, authentic connection and understanding. It was clear that the bond we once cherished had begun to fray, prompting me to reevaluate our union and rediscover the connection that once defined us. The following day, I resolved to engage Joanna in a sincere and profound conversation. This time, I would not shy away from the challenge nor settle for mere compromise. It was crucial for me to convey my heartfelt emotions, to articulate the need for her presence and her sincerity. As dusk settled in, I arrived home ahead of schedule, taking my place at the dining table, anticipation mingling with anxiety. Joanna eventually joined me, trailing her friends who carried with them the easy laughter of a night out. The mood was relaxed as they exchanged stories, yet the moment she spied me, there was a fleeting pause before she approached with a smile. "Staying in tonight?" she inquired lightly. I nodded, my emotions threatening to overflow. "Joanna, may we talk?" She regarded me with a flicker of uncertainty before giving a measured nod. "All right, give me a moment," she murmured, excusing herself to her friends before retreating to the kitchen for a glass of water. Seated across from me, she asked, "What's troubling you, Mike? You seem troubled." Her voice maintained its softness, a stark contrast to the complexity that now characterized our relationship. "Joanna, there's a dissonance between us that's been growing," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "You're frequently out with friends, returning home at late hours. The communication between us has waned, and you no longer share your life with me. It's as if I've become an outsider in my own home." Her smile wilted, replaced by a look of fatigue. "Mike, work has been relentless, and I'm drained. I just need a respite, some time to unwind. You know how much I value you. But you never confided in me." I pressed, my urgency rising. "You kept your feelings to yourself, and by the time I sensed the distance it was already too great. That pain is palpable." Her gaze met mine, laden with conflict and a pang of guilt. "I know, I shouldn't have let you worry. Sometimes I'm torn, between my desire for independence and my fear of losing you. I'm aware I've fallen short, but I don't want you to think my love has waned. We both need to recalibrate and embark on a fresh beginning." At that instant, a heavy burden seemed to lift from my shoulders. Perhaps all the tribulations and hardships we've endured were designed to forge our marriage into a stronger bond. We've ceased to be merely autonomous entities. We've evolved into each other's pillars of support. Despite the ambiguity of the path that lies ahead, we've committed to walking it in unison, to mending what has been fractured, and to infusing our relationship with new vitality. In the subsequent weeks, Joanna and I appeared to rediscover a sense of equilibrium. Our communication flows more freely. She started to share her stresses and anxieties with me, and I've abandoned my former habit of immersing myself in work. We've resumed engaging in activities we once cherished, strolling together, sharing meals, and even revisiting our favorite modest eatery. These modest actions have restored a sense of serenity and comfort that had been eluding us. Our relationship seemed to be on the mend, yet I couldn't dispel the niggling uncertainties that lingered. Joanna had indeed become more communicative, but she still received texts from Dan, stirring a sense of disquiet within me. Each time his name popped up on her phone, it felt like a leaden weight settling on my chest. One night, we found ourselves on the sofa, engrossed in a movie as usual. Joanna nestled against my shoulder, periodically diverting her gaze to her phone. Her intent expression only fueled my burgeoning unease. She glanced at her phone, then abruptly rose and headed towards the kitchen. "Where are you headed?" I inquired, taken aback by her sudden movement. "Just fetching some water," she responded brusquely, averting her eyes from me. I remained seated, my feelings becoming increasingly tangled. There was an palpable shift in her demeanor whenever she picked up her phone, a tension she tried to mask. My heart sank. Was this my burden to bear? Was I perpetually suspicious of her, and had these doubts already outstripped my tolerance? After 10 minutes, Joanna returned with a glass of water, her silence intact as she resumed her seat. I was tempted to ask her about her phone, to broach the subject of any concerns she might want to share. But as the words formed, I swallowed them back. The atmosphere between us grew oppressive, as if an invisible wall hindered our free communication. That night, sleep eluded me. The darkened phone screen, with its faint luminance, beckoned to me, yet I lacked the nerve to peruse her messages. I once believed our bond unbreakable, that after enduring so many tempests together, something as minor as a momentary lapse couldn't fray it. But now, I felt like a marionette, manipulated by the doubts that gnawed at my peace of mind. I told myself I couldn't let these suspicions unravel my trust in Joanna. She was my closest confidant, the one I ought to trust implicitly. Yet, why did my heart flutter with unease whenever Dan's name appeared on her screen? Following Joanna's departure to a social gathering, I surreptitiously accessed her phone, the familiar passcode unlocking it with ease. Until this moment, I had harbored no suspicions. My heart pounded fiercely as my fingers brushed the screen, my actions driven by an uncontrollable urge, delving into her messaging app. The initial exchange was between her and Dan. The words on the display seemed to physically tighten my chest, as though an invisible force was squeezing my heart. Dan's text proposed, "How about tonight? Could we meet? Our schedules are so packed. I truly wish we could spend more time together." Joanna's response was succinct. "I'd like that, but not tonight. Let's touch base on Friday." In that instant, a jolt akin to an electric shock coursed through me. Her tone was not that of an acquaintance. It resonated with the intimacy of two individuals sharing a clandestine connection. She had never disclosed such close encounters with Dan to me. Whenever I expressed my doubts, she deflected with work-related alibis, omitting any mention of these private dialogues. My hands grew clammy, and a vice-like pressure constricted my chest. I persisted in examining her message history, each successive conversation with Dan becoming more familiar and fraught with innuendo. The pain was too much to bear, and I ceased my perusal. The sensation was as if the ground beneath me was giving way. The trust one had placed in her now appeared fragile, like a sandcastle eroded by the relentless waves. I dismissed the mundane family notifications and friendly messages, closing the phone with a profound sense of desolation. Denial was no longer an option. I could no longer feign ignorance or maintain the illusion of normalcy. The wave of betrayal crashing inside me was suffocating, clouding my thoughts. Upon Joanna's return, her concern was immediate upon seeing me seated on the sofa, my complexion pale and my gaze fixed on the floor. She approached, her features etched with worry. "Mike, what's wrong? You don't look well." I raised my head slowly, my voice quivering as I spoke. "I know," I uttered, my tone devoid of life. Her eyes widened, a flicker of anxiety crossing them as she queried, "Know what? Joanna, your relationship with Dan is no longer a well-kept secret," I stated, observing her countenance pale and a fleeting anxiety flicker within her gaze. She swiftly composed herself, though. "Mike, allow me to clarify." "Clarify?" I interjected, my tone escalating. "What is there left to elucidate? The clandestine bond you share is out in the open. I've seen the exchanges. You've betrayed my trust. Her gaze was now brimming with remorse and inner turmoil. Mike, I am genuinely apologetic, but it's not as it appears. Dan and I are merely friends. There's nothing untoward transpiring between us. Merely friends, I challenged, my voice tinged with rage. Are friends the individuals who correspond daily in private and arrange secret meetings? You never mentioned this to me. Why did you keep the true nature of your association with Dan concealed? You were aware of my concerns, yet you offered no insight. She hung her head low, regret swimming in her eyes. Chung-run, I was mistaken. I shouldn't have kept this from you. Dan and I have a complex connection, but I swear we haven't engaged in the activities you're imagining. I was just at a loss on how to confront you, how to navigate our relationship. I'm truly perplexed. In that instant, it felt as if my heart was being ripped apart. I once firmly believed that our union was unassailable, our trust unbreachable. However, in one disclosure through a single message it was shattered. The chasm that had formed between us was ineffable. No simple clarification could bridge it. I looked at her. My heart swelled with disappointment and pain. Joanna, it's clear I cannot condone you concealing things from me. I cannot continue under this pretense. My voice wavered. I'm uncertain if we can retrieve what we once had. Tears finally traced down her cheeks, but they failed to alter the resolve I felt in my heart. I knew then, our marriage had reached a junction with no path back. Mike, I am deeply sorry. I was wrong. But I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me, she implored, her voice laden with endless entreaty. Despite her apologies, the fracture in my heart was beyond mending. It was in that moment, when the realization struck that from the outset, certain truths had been deliberately obscured, that I could no longer bear the burden of deception. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming, and the idyllic past we cherished seemed irretrievably lost. Joanna, I began, my tone more frigid than anticipated. I need to collect myself. Your words have resonated. But in this instant, I'm grappling with a decision. Her gaze lifted to mine, flickers of hope mingling with profound trepidation in her eyes. She seemed to hang on my every word, yearning for an opportunity to rectify her wrongs. Yet, deep down, I knew that our chance for redemption was gone. Do you realize, Joanna? I pondered aloud, that I once believed you to be the constant support I'd never falter? We've weathered storms together, reached milestones side by side. How did we arrive at this juncture? A heavy sigh escaped me, the weight of my sorrow pressing down on my chest. I held our trust to be inviolable, only to find it shattered repeatedly by your actions. She clutched her lip between her teeth, her eyes brimming with conflict and remorse. Mike, I have erred. I understand the depth of your disappointment and accept that forgiveness may be beyond reach. Perhaps I never truly grasped the value you placed on our union. I rose and moved to the window, gazing into the pitch-black night. My mind was a void, yet a resolute sense of conclusion washed over me. It was clear. I could no longer be ensnared in this tortuous relationship. Once, I thought I could show tolerance, continue to extend the olive branch as I had in the past. But the stark reality was that her betrayal was not a fleeting lapse. It was a deep-seated wound that had cut to the quick. Joanna? I started deliberately, my voice tinged with sorrow. I was willing to adapt for you, to strive for equilibrium in our lives, but your betrayal has brought me nothing but pain. With a heavy heart and a sense of powerlessness, she pleaded. I acknowledge my mistake and the pain I've caused you, but I implore you to grant me another opportunity. I am prepared to transform, to rectify my wrongs. Her entreaty struck a chord within me, yet the sense of disappointment and a frosty aloofness lingered, preventing any return to the past. I hung my head, offering a wry smile devoid of warmth. Only a profound sadness remained. Joanna, I murmured. Once trust is shattered, it is an arduous task to restore it. I'm uncertain if we can revert to our former selves, but I am no longer the Mike who would tolerate any transgression. It may be time for me to step away from this marriage and seek a fresh beginning. She remained silent, her head bowed, tears streaming down her cheeks like a swollen river breaking its banks. Yet, as I observed her distress, my heart remained impervious. Yes, I had loved her deeply, but now I found it intolerable. Despite her remorse, the scar of her betrayal was incurable. That night we communicated no further. I lay awake, my mind in turmoil, revisiting our history. From our initial encounter to our nuptials, every shared path, every joyous smile, every reconciliation after a quarrel. It all seemed like a recent memory. We had once harbored mutual dreams and mapped out our future together. But now, those aspirations were hollow phrases, a poignant void in my chest that I could never expunge. I reached a decision. The following day, I visited a law office to discuss divorce proceedings. I am not one to make hasty choices, but at that moment, I knew the relationship was beyond repair. I needed to rediscover myself, to embark on a new journey. Regardless of the circumstances, separating from Joanna and breaking this illusion of a marriage was my only viable option. That evening, I beckoned her from the kitchen, and we faced each other on the sofa. She could perceive my determination, fear dancing in her eyes, mixed with an overwhelming sense of helplessness. "Mike, what have you done today?" she inquired softly, her voice quivering. I grasped the edge of her shirt tightly. "Are you truly convinced?" she queried, her tone barely above a murmur. "Mike, I realize I've erred. Grant me another opportunity. Please, don't abandon me." Her eyes filled with tears once more, but she maintained her gaze, as if hoping to sway my resolution. Yet my heart had already firmly made its choice, and there was no possibility of reversing course. "Joanna," I began, acknowledging the difficulty she faced in comprehending my decision. "It's challenging for you to grasp this, but I can no longer persist in this manner. You're well aware of my affection for you, and the effort I invested in preserving our relationship. However, at this juncture, all I can assert is that there's no going back." My tone remained composed yet resolute. "I need to reclaim my independence and rediscover my true self." Her frame quivered subtly, and tears trailed down her fingers. She remained silent, simply bowing her head and letting the tears cascade. I had nothing further to articulate. Rising to my feet, I made my way to the bedroom and retrieved my luggage. "Mike, you're genuinely going to leave?" Her query echoed behind me, laced with sorrow and desperation. I didn't respond by turning around. Instead, I halted at the threshold, casting a prolonged glance in her direction. This woman, whom I had once cherished with all my heart, had transformed into a weight I could no longer bear. Perhaps in time we might find it within us to restart, but for now what I urgent need was solitude and time, to mend, to rediscover my essence, and to locate the part of me that no longer bore the burden of betrayal. "Farewell, Joanna," I murmured, as I closed the door behind me, embarking on a new chapter of my life. Stepping beyond the threshold of what was once my sanctuary, an unprecedented sense of alleviation washed over me. Perhaps this marked the nascent stage of a protracted journey. Yet on this day, I had at last emerged from the umbral grip of that anguish.